Your hair type isn't just about style, it's a survival blueprint written by 200,000 years of human history. Every curl, wave, and strand on your head carries information about where your ancestors lived, what climate they survived, and how the human body solved one of evolution's most brutal problems, keeping the brain alive. Over 90% of people have never thought about why their hair looks the way it does, but the answer will change how you see yourself in the mirror. Here's what textbooks rarely mention. The human brain generates an enormous amount of heat, around 20% of your total body heat at rest, and significantly more during physical exertion. For our ancestors running across the African savanna, brain overheating wasn't an inconvenience, it was death. So the human body evolved a cooling system unlike any other mammal on Earth, and hair was a central piece of that system. Let's go through each type and what it actually means. Tightly coiled hair. Tightly coiled hair is arguably the most sophisticated thermal engineering solution in the human body. Research published in PNAS, the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, confirmed what scientists had long suspected. Tightly coiled hair creates a natural air gap between the scalp and the sun. Because the coils stand away from the skull rather than lying flat, they trap insulating air while simultaneously allowing heat to escape from the sides. The result? Tightly coiled hair reduces solar heat gain by up to 50% compared to straight hair lying directly on the scalp. And it does this while still allowing sweat to evaporate efficiently, the primary mechanism humans use for cooling. This is why tightly coiled hair dominates in populations from sub-Saharan Africa, where solar radiation is most intense. This wasn't cosmetic evolution. It was a survival mechanism protecting the most energy-expensive organ in the human body. But here's the detail that genuinely surprises researchers. The coil pattern itself acts as a moisture regulator. The tight spiral structure slows the rate at which sweat reaches the surface, timing its evaporation for maximum cooling effect. Nature engineered a programmable cooling delay inside your hair follicle. Straight hair. Straight hair grows from a perfectly round follicle, a symmetrical tube that produces a uniformly shaped strand with no natural curve. And this simplicity was an evolutionary masterstroke for cold climates. In northern latitudes where early humans migrated after leaving Africa, the greatest thermal challenge wasn't overheating, it was heat retention. Straight hair lies flat against the scalp, forming a tight wind-resistant layer that reduces heat loss from the head. Straight hair is also significantly denser per square centimeter on the scalp than other hair types, creating a thicker thermal blanket. For populations in East Asia and the Arctic, where winter temperatures plunge far below freezing, this structural difference could mean the difference between survival and hypothermia. And there's another factor scientists identified. Straight hair in many East Asian populations has a notably larger diameter than African or European hair, sometimes nearly double. Thicker strands mean more structural insulation and greater resistance to cold wind. Your hair is thermally calibrated to the climate your ancestors spent millennia in. Hair. Wavy hair is the evolutionary compromise, and compromise in evolutionary biology is often the most successful strategy of all. Wavy hair grows from an oval follicle, slightly asymmetric, producing a strand that curves gently rather than coiling tightly or falling straight. In temperate climates, the Mediterranean, the Middle East, Central Asia, populations face both hot summers and cold winters. Wavy hair provides moderate insulation against cold while still allowing better ventilation than straight hair. It's a thermal generalist in a climate that demands flexibility. Geneticists studying the EDAR gene, which controls hair follicle shape, found that wavy hair variants appear most frequently in populations that historically occupied transitional climate zones. Evolution didn't pick a winner, it built an all-rounder. Wavy hair is also the most common hair type globally, found across European, Middle Eastern, South Asian, and many indigenous populations, which tells you something important. Most of human history wasn't spent at the extremes. It was spent somewhere in between. Curly hair, the spectrum between wavy and tightly coiled, represents one of evolution's most nuanced solutions. Found most commonly in populations from North Africa, the Horn of Africa, southern Europe, and parts of South Asia, curly hair combines elements of both the coil's cooling architecture and the wave's insulating flexibility. What makes this hair type scientifically fascinating is what researchers discovered about humidity response. Curly hair is highly hygroscopic. It responds dramatically to moisture in the air. In humid tropical environments, as ambient humidity rises, the curl tightens slightly, increasing the air gap and improving ventilation at precisely the time the body needs it most. The curl isn't a fixed structure, it's a dynamic, moisture-responsive cooling system that adjusts to environmental conditions in real time. And then there's a hair type most people have never heard of, and it demolishes one of the biggest assumptions in the science of hair. Melanesian hair, found in populations across Papua New Guinea, the Solomon Islands, Fiji, and Vanuatu, is tightly curled, similar in appearance to African hair. But here's what makes it extraordinary. Genetic analysis confirmed that this curl pattern evolved completely independently from African populations. The same physical solution, tight coils for tropical heat, appeared twice in human history, on opposite sides of the planet, with no shared ancestry. Scientists call this convergent evolution. Nature found the same answer to the same problem twice from scratch. It's one of the strongest pieces of evidence that tightly coiled hair in tropical climates isn't coincidence. It's an engineered response to intense UV radiation and heat, so effective that evolution reinvented it independently. Here's the part that reframes everything. All human hair variation, every curl pattern, every diameter, every texture, traces back to changes in a handful of key genes. The most studied is TCHH, or trichohyalin, which controls the cross-linking of proteins inside the hair shaft, and EDAR, which determines follicle shape. In 2018, a landmark study published in Nature Communications identified 124 genetic variants associated with hair shape across diverse global populations. The researchers found that these variants clustered geographically, not randomly, but in clear patterns aligned with historical climate zones. The human body didn't randomly generate hair variation. It systematically diversified hair architecture across latitudes, guided by the same selection pressure: keep the brain cool in heat, retain warmth in cold, manage water and humidity. Every hair type is a localized solution to the same universal problem. The extraordinary thing is that this system still works. People with tightly coiled hair still have measurably lower rates of scalp UV damage in high sun environments. People with straight, dense hair still have a natural thermal advantage in cold wind. The engineering didn't stop functioning just because we invented houses and hats. So the next time you run your fingers through your hair, or battle it in the humidity, or watch it expand in the rain, remember what you're actually touching. 200,000 years of climate engineering. A biological record of every latitude your ancestors ever called home.